think I'm seeing the future.
New York City's a whole new level of crazy these days.
What do you want from me? What do you
New York City's a whole new level of crazy these days.
Every once in a while, Hollywood needs a good proverbial punch to the face to remind them that they are in the business of making products that no one really needs. An audience has just delivered that punch to the face over Madame Webb, and that is going to have some repercussions, and you'll hardly believe which ones. What exactly will happen after the disaster that was Madame Webb? And what exactly happened with Dakota Johnson? Join me, dear viewer, as I dive deep into the dumpster fire that was Madame Webb. The last time Sony tried to force a primarily male brand into a female-centric direction with Ghostbusters 2016, it lost them an astounding $70 million. That's a lot of money for a company like Sony. So that punch to the face taught them the valuable lesson to stay out of such overtly politicized entertainment for a while at least. But in an industry where massive juggernaut corporations like Disney are willing to flush billions upon billions of shareholder value down the drain on signaling the virtue of the C-suite, the lessons don't stay in their brains for long. Even smaller studios will eventually forget how badly the gender-biased Ghostbusters punch to the face hurt and try again, and that's how we end up with a movie like Madame Webb. As I mentioned in my last video about Madame Webb, the sole pitch behind it came from Amy Pascal yet again. You may remember her from 2016's Ghostbusters disaster, which was female-centric and featured an all-female team and nothing else. That was it. That was the extent of the pitch. Shame on the writer, Katie Dippold, for acquiescing to Pascal. But I can't stay too mad at Dippold since I went to college with her, and she was cool as fuck, not to mention a total hottie vixen. I'll blame Amy Pascal instead. Like with Ghostbusters 2016, the issue with Madame Webb was that there wasn't even a clear idea of which female characters to put in it or what story to tell. The only thing that mattered was that it was all female. The rest was filled in from there, and ironically with nothing but filler characters apart from Madame Webb herself, who is an inconsequential side character at best. She's not even B or C tier. For Madame Webb, as well as the rest of the women in the team, they were scraping the absolute bottom of the barrel of the entire Spider-Man IP. So why even make this movie in the first place? The fact that this could ever even be greenlit in the first place is absolutely ludicrous. The fact that they brought in the writers of Morbius to flesh out the script is laughable. Like, really? You thought bringing in the writers of Morbius would save this derivative drivel? As if Morbius was this cinematic masterpiece. Did they want to make more memes with Madame Webb like they did with Morbius? S.J. Clarkson was in no way equipped to handle the job of writing this movie, or directing it. She's got 0 writing credits for any film, and has kind of fumbled her way around the TV side of things her entire career. I guess the highlight of her career was writing 2 episodes of Jessica Jones and Anatomy of a Scandal, both of which weren't super high clout in the first place. S.J. Clarkson was way in over her head. It's true that you need to start somewhere, but she basically fucked herself out of any future projects when this one is going to bomb this hard. Can you guys let me know down below in the comments why a company would allow someone this inexperienced to work on a multi-million-dollar project like Madame Webb? Really, I need your help to understand this. The fact that S.J. Clarkson, who in no way is equipped for feature films, was handed directorial duties on top of all this is utterly insane, even if the movie was already in the can by the time audiences worldwide collectively rejected the Marvels. The indicators that audiences were getting fed up with the woke propaganda and virtue signaling were already there, so Sony had no excuse for having greenlit this production. And I say they deserve to lose every dollar that it will inevitably lose. And they will lose hard, as the movie has opened at about $23 million domestically and maybe twice that much internationally, which isn't as bad as people thought it was gonna be. This means that Sony better brace themselves for a loss in the tens of millions of dollars. But what about actors like Dakota Johnson and Sydney Sweeney? How is this all affecting them? The movie is very much going to hurt the careers of everyone involved. S.J. Clarkson will certainly not be allowed near a film set again. And now news has surfaced that Dakota Johnson was so pissed off that she fired her agent after returning from the shoot. The wild success of Anyone But You will most certainly take the sting out for Sydney Sweeney. If you haven't learned about Anyone But You, go check out my video review of this awesome rom-com. The good news for everyone else, though, is that it might not have been entirely for nothing. Between the Marvels and now Madame Webb, the industry received yet another well-deserved proverbial punch in the face, which they most certainly felt. Case in point, the outlet Bounding Into Comics is reporting that another female-centric Spider-Man spin-off, without Spider-Man, is getting completely retooled as a result. Bounding Into Comics is reporting that the Amazon series co-produced by Sony, Silk Spider Society, has cleaned out its writer's room in service of a massive from-the-ground-up retooling of the entire direction of the series. Now, this probably happened before Madame Webb released, so we know that the studio executives saw the writing on the wall. But they didn't do what Warner Brothers did with Batgirl and completely scrap Madame Webb, because they wanted to recoup at least some of their investment rather than letting it collect dust on a shelf somewhere like Batgirl. Let me know down below in the comments if you guys think it was a good idea to release a movie the studio knew would bomb. Sony knew from box office tracking that Madame Webb was destined to flop hard months ago. So it's hard to believe that the inevitable failure of Madame Webb didn't directly influence the retooling of the Silk series. What we know so far about the series before the retooling was that it was set to follow the story of Cindy Moon, a young woman with her own set of spider powers who escapes imprisonment and searches for her missing family on her way to becoming the superhero Silk. Yeah, that sounds like yet another Spider-Man spin-off without our beloved Webhead. What's the point? Though it first entered full production in November of 2022, the onset of the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike resulted in the series being put on indefinite hold until the labor dispute eventually came to a close in September of that year. Well, they should be thankful for the strike then, because now at least they had a chance to retool. Otherwise, they'd be locked in and headed for failure following the strike's conclusion. Deadline reported that the Silk Spider Society writers' room had been looking to get back in the saddle sometime in mid to late January of 2023. However, if a recent report from the Ankler is to be believed, these plans for the writers' return have instead turned into plans for a complete project restart. What exactly does this mean for the future of these Marvel movies then? Well, it's actually not as good as news as the series being completely scrapped, but this at least opens the door to buying them time to realize that scrapping the show is the only way to go. Now we're getting news that they're pivoting hard on the look, feel, and direction of the show. The rumor mill is saying that they are refocusing on a more male-centric audience in mind, an audience like Reacher, Jack Ryan, and The Terminal List, all of which were wildly successful Amazon Prime shows. But why do they think this will work over cancellation? So the lesson here is pretty clear. Whenever you make something female-centric like Ghostbusters 2016, or The Marvels, or even Madame Webb, it means that it will essentially be inaccessible for men. They may as well put a "No Men Allowed" sign on the movie's poster. As I've mentioned in many of my other videos, they're chasing an audience that doesn't exist while simultaneously alienating their core audience. They're basically trying to create demand where none exists and kill the demand that they already had in their male audience. The prime example of appealing to both male and female audiences alike was what happened with Rambo: Last Blood in 2019. The movie released alongside a female-centric Charlie's Angel reboot, yet more women ended up seeing Rambo than saw Charlie's Angels. So making a movie good, regardless of who it appeals to, will end up appealing to a broader audience. Anything that is made to appeal to men, if done correctly, will automatically appeal to women as well. Case in point, when Ike Perlmutter was in charge of running the MCU, it built a core audience of both genders across language and culture barriers across the world, as it appealed to everyone without alienating anyone. So the one good thing to come out of this Madame Webb fiasco was that it further drove the lesson home for studios not to chase audiences in demand that don't exist, but rather to make a movie that has a good story, good character development, and appeals to a broader audience. The complete overhaul of the Silk series over at Amazon is a sign that we may be closer to the end of the woke disasters of the MCU. What Madame Webb did for us as the audience was to show the studios even more that they should make movies that appeal to as broad of an audience as possible. After all, who is Madame Webb even made for? It certainly wasn't for fans of Sydney Sweeney's Anyone But You or Dakota Johnson's 50 Shades crowd. But what do you guys think of all this? Do you think that Madame Webb signals the end of the female-centric MCU, or have studios not learned their lesson yet? Please do let me know down below in the comments, and as always, hit that like button, ring that notification bell, and smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.